Hey friends, happy Wednesday, the 10th of January. Nice to be with you. I'm Father Bill Hill, priest at Holy Spirit Catholic Community in Rock Springs, Wyoming. I'll share with you a reflection on the daily readings. The readings are linked down below. Click the link, read the readings prayerfully, and then turn off the screen, spend some time with God before you move on to the cares of this life. It's like the second day of ordinary time. I know we're still decorated for Christmas because that's when I had to shoot this, but it's Wednesday of the first week of ordinary time. We're working on the first book of Samuel, and we are working on the Gospel of Mark. I actually am going to start with the Gospel of Mark today because I think that there's a lot of good stuff in there for me, perhaps for you. Also, an incredible story from the first reading as well. So, the Gospel of Mark. We have the beginning of Jesus' ministry in Capernaum, and he goes into the house of Simon Peter, a new disciple, and heals Simon Peter's mother-in-law, mindful that Simon Peter is Peter, the first bishop of Rome, and this is his wife's mother, right? Always interesting family connections and life connections. And then she extends hospitality to these visitors. Strong biblical virtue. And be mindful, right? Like a couple weeks ago, I had the flu. It took me a few days to heal naturally. Like she is so much better that she is amazingly able to stand up and immediately extend hospitality to her visitors. The sign of Jesus is so powerful that the entire town gathers at the door. I mean, maybe you just pray with a few of these images. These are striking and dramatic images that Mark gives. And then I just find the last paragraph to be incredibly important in Mark's gospel. We do not see this terribly often in Mark's gospel. Jesus who retires to a private place in order to pray. Like I said yesterday, Mark's gospel, Jesus is very, very active. So here we see Jesus who retires and prays. Be mindful that Simon Peter and these other disciples are from Capernaum. I mean, just imagine the pressure. Like Jesus is healing people in your home. And everybody in town is like, oh, Simon Peter, this is amazing. I can't believe it, man. This is awesome. There's probably a great deal of desire from Simon Peter and the others to let's go back. Like the neighbors are super excited and super impressed with me. Let's do this again. Jesus is like, no, be mindful. He's leaving work undone. He's leaving people unhealed and unliberated because his mission is forward. This is something that is incredibly hard for me to wrestle with, like my own expectations, the expectations of others, and what I understand to be the mission of God. How about for you, right? Like in my estimation, married folks, husbands and wives and parents and folks out in the world, like there are so many options and so many demands and so many expectations that others put on us that we put on ourselves. And it can be super hard to sort those out and to know what is the mission of God for me today, this week, this month, right now in this stage of my life. What's God wanting me to do so that I can be faithful? Something that has been in my prayer a lot is to try to discern the will of God and sacrifice even that which is good. It's not just the choice between good and bad. That's easy. But the choice between the will of God and that which is good is the challenge that I've been wrestling with. What's God's will? What's God's mission? What's God's call for you today, concretely? Spend some time just being open to that. That, I think, is the call of the gospel. All right, enough. Speaking of calls, first reading, first letter of Samuel. Famous, popular sort of a reading. If this is a reading that you've prayed with a fair amount, remember to slow down. Remember to put the brakes on and maybe read it a few times especially, but we can have a tendency to read for information, and so this story can be familiar to us and we can rip through it. Rather, let's see where your heart is resonating and is pausing. Story of Eli. One of the things that I love to have conversations with people about the story of Eli. Do you wish you could physically, with your ears hear the will of God, the call of God, the voice of God? There are some of us who are like, oh man, wouldn't that make it so much easier? There are others of us that are like, oh, no way. I do not want to mess around with that. As you pray with Eli, maybe you pray with the question like, how has God moved in your life? right? Spoken in your life, perhaps not with physical words that, vibrate through the atmosphere that you hear, but how has God spoken in your life? How would you like the Lord to work in your life as you move forward? How are you doing at being like Samuel, right? Here I am, Lord. I come to do your will. And maybe pray with a bit of the psalm response, which is that same response in the psalm. Here I am, Lord. I come to do your will. Just be open with the Lord about how you've experienced God in the past and how you desire to do God's will today, moving forward. All right, great readings. Enough for me. Great readings. Go spend some time with God. Read those readings prayerfully. Turn off the screen. Spend some time with God. Pray for folks that are having a hard time. God bless y'all.